Hello, time management fans. My name is Glenn Watt, Senior Editor of Time Management Magazine. Today, we're fortunate to be joined by Julia Morgenstern, dubbed the Queen of Putting People's Lives in Order by USA Today. Is a New York Times best-selling author, speaker, and productivity consultant. Her books, including Time Management from the Inside Out, Never Check Email in the Morning, and Shed Your Stuff, Change Your Life, are timeless guides that have helped millions of people boost their productivity and effectiveness. Julie has been working with individuals and companies globally for over 20 years, designing practical solutions to better organize space, time, information, projects, and teams. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us, Julie.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated. I know you've got a busy schedule, so we'll get right to it. I was just reading through your bio there, and the first thing that jumped out at me that I'm wondering about is, how did you begin your career as the queen of putting people's lives in order?
Well, I started my business about 23 years ago, and my prior career was actually as a director, a theater director, which is for another form of taming chaos. You know, it's a big project management. You're trying to manage people and on stage and behind stage and audiences all toward a common goal. And so I think my theatrical training kind of gave me a little bit of that foothold. It was an organizing project. The other thing about directing is that directors have to kind of oscillate between their eye on the big picture and then zoom in on the tiny detail, and how does that connect to the big picture, tiny detail. And so that facility played out in my theater career, and it's really what I do with people's lives. You know, I find out what their goals are, and then I look at the grains of sand in their life and their system, and how does their system and what they're spending their time on every day, or how does their environment support and connect to those big picture goals?
Excellent. Yeah, I guess that would give you a lot of practice in the time management business, zooming from the macro down to the micro. That would give you a really good foundation and some skills. Another question. You've authored numerous books. Could you tell us about your most recent?
So my most recent book is called Shed Your Stuff, Change Your Life. And it's really about the decluttering process as a catalyst for managing change. So it's really, in many ways, it's a change management book. And when we go through transitions, when we go through changes in our careers, in our lives, various life stages, planned transitions, unplanned transitions, it requires adjusting, right? We have to make some shifts. And people are usually so lost. And the work that I do, which is decluttering, let's find out what is obsolete in your space. Let's identify that. Let's find out what's obsolete in your schedule. Let's find out what's obsolete in your habits. By identifying and focusing on the tangible things that are in your world that are no longer relevant and releasing them, we actually open up space for change. So it takes what is usually a very amorphous, miserable, awful process and makes it very tangible and puts you in control of the change by looking at what's around you that no longer is relevant. It's a very powerful process.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it'd be very helpful. Yeah, definitely. Look, in that same regard, going through that process, what do you think some of the challenges might be for someone trying to better manage their time?
So generally speaking, when it comes to time, I think the biggest obstacle in managing our time lies in our perception of time. People tend to think of time in a very kind of qualitative, ethereal way. Time is relative. Time is something that you can't really see. And how long is an hour? It depends on what you're doing, really, right? When you're doing something really fun, an hour is like 5 minutes. And if you're doing something awful, miserable, that you hate, an hour can feel like forever. So people tend to relate to time in a very intangible way. And one of the very first things that I do when I work with clients in my books, Time Management from the Inside Out, that whole book is based on shifting your perception from an intangible view to a very tangible view of time, and then it becomes something you can better manage. And I compare organizing time to organizing space. And the visual metaphor actually helps people, I know what to do here. I have to, just like my closet, I have to group similar items, right? Like a disorganized closet, or a disorganized garage, things are in so many different places, it's total chaos. And the same is true of a disorganized day. It's very chaotic. So you organize time in very similar principles of organizing a physical space, and then you end up really gaining time, getting much more out of each day, feeling more in control, feeling less scattered, feeling in control. And when you feel in control, stress goes down and productivity goes up.
Wow, I don't think I've ever quite thought of it that way, but I can really see how the metaphor holds. That's very profound. I guess in a similar vein, as such a prolific speaker and author, what are the biggest lessons you've learned about time management?
Well, other than, sort of this sort of foundational metaphor, there's a lot about time. I think one of the simplest things is that planning, which I used to be very disorganized. I was a very right-brain creative person, and the idea of planning and committing to anything in advance before the moment where I could like spontaneously feel what the right thing to do was, I was like, I don't want to plan. That's going to like cut out options. I always wanted to have all options and just spin on a dime. But what ends up happening when you live your life that way is I think you lose about 40% of your day in decision making, minute by minute. Gee, do I do this, or do I do that, or do I do that? And so you lose so much of your day to micro decisions and minute by minute decisions. And so I've learned that there's sort of a middle ground. You need to have a balance between structure and spontaneity to really exist well in the world, to seize opportunities that you may not have expected that are good for you, to handle crises when they happen, and even to be a good citizen of the world. You can't be so rigid, right, that if somebody needs a favor that you're like, oh no, I'm scheduled for the next 3 weeks, see me in 3 weeks. So there's a balance. And I think actually where we are in the world today, it's a 3-day arc. I think that you kind of have your plan, but you always sort of want to keep a 3-day arc. What's happening the next 3 days? And if you know, and you end every day by planning tomorrow plus 2 days beyond that, you keep a 3-day arc of plans, you're then in a position to get the most out of every day and still be able to spin on a dime if an opportunity or a crisis presents itself in context. So it's kind of having a 3-day, your headlights 3 days out, and you organize your time in 3-day chunks.
Wow, that's really quite thought-provoking. I don't think I've ever thought about doing it in 3-day chunks, but that seems to be another very powerful metaphor for managing what you've got going on, and like you say, being able to incorporate new tasks or new things that are going on. That's really, I don't think I've ever heard that before. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for listeners, it's not only in 3 days. Of course, you may have things planned out for weeks in advance, but you keep your eye on that 3-day arc so you can adjust to what life is throwing at you and the new information. So it's not just, for the next hour, it's the next 3 days. And it's a very, very powerful way to manage your time and be flexible.
Wow, that's really good. So what is your favorite tool to use to implement time management practices?
So I think everybody needs a planner. I think we've gotten into a world where there are so many ways to manage our schedule and our to-do lists and our calendars and our notes and our ideas that people are scattered among many, many, many different tools. So my favorite tool is just having a single consistent place. Everybody needs one place that captures appointments and to-dos. And actually you need to factor into your system where you're going to keep your ideas, your notes, meeting notes, or brainstorms or ideas. Those are the three kind of components that are very connected to our time, right? Our ideas need time to be implemented. You don't want to. So most people actually separate these three elements: appointments, to-dos, and ideas. But your system needs to integrate them all. And I actually designed a planner that's a paper-based planner with Levenger. And it's with their Circus system, so the pages are interchangeable, and you can rearrange pages as your days need to be rearranged. So it's very conducive to our digital lives, actually. And a lot of people, there's studies. There was a big study done by Virginia Tech on calendar use, and it found that it found a lot, but two things that really just rose to the top of my attention. One is that I think close to 90% of the people only use their calendars for dated events like meetings or birthdays or dinner appointments. And 90% of the people separated their to-dos. It's a big mistake because your to-dos are going to take up a significant amount of your time. Why are you not factoring them into your schedule? They have to be factored in. They're taking your hours, so they should be blended. And the second data that they found is that even for people who are using digital technology, large majority still use paper for writing down their to-dos, etc. So I designed a planner that actually enables you to really capture that on paper with a digital kind of flexibility. So it's a really powerful tool, just came out, and it's based on my 20-something years of working with clients and helping them. It's called the Balanced Life Planner, and it's based on the principles of how you balance your time to fuel your energy.
Well, that's really good. Maybe what I can do is get the link from you, and I can put it below the interview, so that if somebody wants to check it out, they can go and click on it. I know I'm kind of interested because I do use a variety of electronic. Well, I use one electronic tool primarily, but I'm guilty. I still have a paper-based planner that I've had for years.
So many people do, Glenn, and I feel like, you said sort of guilty as charged, and people feel guilty using paper. But here's what some of the brain science is telling us. When we're too tied to our screens, we stay in the frontal cortex of our brains, which is a kind of shallow part of the brain, and it's more for the quick transactional urgencies. But we don't get into the deeper recesses of our brain where decision-making and good strategy happens and innovation happens. So paper disconnects you from the screen, that's shallow, and enables you to access the deeper parts of your brain for decision-making and strategic planning. And it also, people feel when they write things down, that there's a little bit more of a permanent record of what they've done. And I feel like people just want a witness. Their days go through their fingers like sand, and it's like, what did I do in the last day or week? When you have a paper planner, you can see what you've done. You get the pleasure of crossing it off. You get the pleasure of referencing back. So there are a lot of reasons why people still prefer paper. And paper, paper's going to find its unique value to us. Technology's not going to, just like the car didn't replace the bicycle, technology is not going to replace paper. Each will find its unique purpose.
Yeah, I have to agree. What should be the biggest takeaway for people who see this interview?
I think time management and what I often refer to as time mastery, I think there's two things people should really remember about it. One is it's a lifelong skill. It is not something that you go to like one workshop or even read. You can read my book, but you're not going to master time in one sitting. It is a lifelong practice. And I do think that good time management is kind of like the oil in the machine of life. If you master time, you can achieve so much of what you want in life. It's kind of like the infrastructure of our lives is our organizational systems. They're not taught in school. It's not taught in the house. This is like the infrastructure of our lives. Those life skills are not taught anywhere. How long did it take you to learn to read or to write or to become a management consultant? These are lifelong practices. So be patient with yourself. Don't judge yourself as a bad time manager. It's just a challenging skill for everybody. And just, you learn one skill at a time. You learn one aspect at a time. Shift your relationship to time and also your own characterization of yourself in relation to time. And just take the judgment out and you just start practicing one skill at a time as applies to your life right now. And just be on it for the long haul. It's really fascinating if you think of yourself as a lifelong student of time management.
Very true. Very true. What is the most challenging for you when using time management techniques?
So I think like everybody, I switching gears, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker, I run a business. And there's a variety of roles that I play. And each role requires a different part of my brain or my skill set. And it's hard to switch back and forth between those. And so to me, I probably most focus on that. I find that when you group the order in which you do things and the way you group your activities can fuel your efficiency or completely strip your gears. So, I think that's what I focus on most in my own time management is making sure that I'm doing strategic planning or deep thinking or writing at a particular time of day. And I try to group my client-facing stuff at another part of the day. And my administrative stuff, I try to containerize it so that it doesn't all bleed together and I'm not fragmented and switching. But you have to keep making adjustments. All of a sudden a client wants you for, 4 solid days. You got to do it, batch it, and then, you have to catch up on the other side. So, you have to make adjustments. But that's what I pay attention to the most when it comes to my own time management is the order and timing of what I do.
Mm-hmm. I know that's definitely a challenge I can acknowledge as well, or have as well, is containerizing the different parameters of different aspects of life that have to be dealt with and managed in different times. That's definitely a challenge I face as well. Another question, of course, the point of time management is to be able to enjoy your life. So one of my next question is, what is your passion outside of time management?
I probably a couple of different things. I live in New York City. I'm kind of a culture. I love theater. I love live music. I love being around people. I'm a very social animal. And I'd say like my biggest passion is dance. I love movement. So New York City, they have in the summer times like swing dancing on Lincoln Center, at Lincoln Center Plaza, or out on the Hudson River. And, I love dance. I love movement. I love group gatherings. I love being out in the city. And when I travel, I enjoy all kinds of environments, from like the mountains to cool villages in Europe to, just like sort of the world, what's out there and how people are living and being engaged with people and cultures.
Very, very. I can attest to the swing dancing out front of Lincoln Center. I was there in 2000, I think it was, and was quite surprised when I came out of it. I can't remember the hotel, but I came out and there was some swing dancing going on. Yeah, it's great.
Hundreds of people out there, 1,000. And just watching people dance. Even if you're not dancing, there's so much joy in it, and there's so much release in it, and happiness. And I love watching people dance as much as I love dancing.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Julia. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing some of your tips and ideas and some of your frankness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.